Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning. Paul has a voice strengthening exercise that he's doing. So if he pulls out a straw at any point in time and starts to blow through the straw, it's a voice strengthening exercise.
We want to add those really cool sound effects to the show. And so I've got the low voice, so I can do the didgeridoo sound.
Believe it or not, a doctor told him that he needs to blow through that straw.
Seriously.
Healthcare at its finest. Yeah, true story.
Ryan, may you never need to go to a ear, nose, and throat specialist. Because I had a scope with a little camera on it shoved up my nose and down into my throat.
Oh, wow.
It's not fun.
I'm sure. I've been to one before, but it was because of an injury.
No.
So let's hope I don't have to go again.
Yeah. So they charged you, I don't know how many thousands of dollars probably for that scoping, and then said, here, you need a straw.
Yeah. And I just need to sit here and I just need to sit here like back in my concert choir days and go, yee. And that'll warm up my voice, and then I won't get like super vocal fatigue.
Fun stuff. Well, welcome to the Tuesday workshop. It's good to see y'all. Naomi will not be joining us today. She's got some other things going on.
We are lacking the feminine perspective today. This is not good. We're already deficient without Naomi.
That's true. We could use the feminine perspective.
Mm.
Yes. Well, in the chat, we were just thinking about what has come up recently, and it seems that we are quickly approaching the end of 2023. Big plans were made in 2023, as they were in 2022 and the years prior. So the discussion topic for today is, how have you grown in the past year? Were there any defining moments? And if so, how did those affect you and your entrepreneurial drive? How do you go about evaluating your own growth? What are your metrics? And then what are you working on? And how has that recent past or those changes affected you? And how do you see that affecting the remainder of this year as we slide into the end of 2023?
Well, there was, it was right at the beginning of the year that I abandoned a failed attempt at branding myself with a much longer trade name that nobody remembered, and people actually found it confusing to memorize. A 3-word brand name with multiple syllables in it. And it didn't really speak to them. In fact, several people told me, not several, but a few people whose opinions I respected told me that it sort of scared them off in a way. It was a way of sort of touching on an attribute of a lot of the clients I've worked with, but it was too direct to actually call that out in the brand, is the feedback I got. And so toward the end of 22, I had been meditating on this word, emissary, which might also be translated as messenger, evokes the idea of somebody who was in the service of a king and would faithfully carry and transmit that king's communications to another king or to another sovereign or something like that. And anyway, so I had been thinking about doing that with ghostwriting. And then at the beginning of the year, I said, part of the problem with my business is that as soon as we get done writing a manuscript, I am sending my clients to partner companies that I respect, but I really have no long range influence on the outcome for them. I really don't know how well their projects are going to turn out unless they disclose it. Uh, One of them did. And through a series of other conversations, I found that a lot of people, not just my clients, but people who had published books, were dissatisfied with the experience of working with a publisher for one reason or another. There were more common reasons, such as creative control, but there were less common reasons, such as I have to do all the marketing myself. I don't want to do that. I don't mind doing some of it, but I don't want to do all of it, and I don't want to do it alone. And I definitely don't like stuffing envelopes and running to the post office every day to do fulfillment. So to get to the point of the story, this led to the conversations we had, Jason, at the beginning, and said, is there a way that we can not, I don't want to say redeem, but that we can act redemptively with some of the ways that authors, particularly authors who don't necessarily have a national brand or an internationally recognizable face. Is there some way we can move in a redemptive direction towards helping them become not just published authors, but successful published authors? And then a good, strong collaboration sprung up around that. And so to answer the question, how have you grown and how have things changed for you? Well, the process of beginning to do sales calls together and hearing you talk through the sides of the business where I am just inexperienced or just plain don't want to do it, not very good at it, et cetera, has really accelerated my ability to have the right kind of high level conversations, so that the end result is the metrics is that I rarely get beyond a 5 to 10 minute conversation where I don't I either disqualify someone who is not ready to be a successful author, or I qualify someone who is. And so it's made it much simpler, much less time wasted. I'm not spending any money on this. Since I made that progression, people have just started coming to me through referrals, yes, but also not through referrals sometimes. And it's been extraordinary. It's like I'm having radically different conversations than I was last year, and it's leading to some very profitable and some very satisfying times of my business's life cycle.
So you went from your brand Reluctant Thought Leader
Mm-hmm.
to Emissary Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wait, what was the name of it that you changed it from?
The Reluctant Thought Leader.
Oh, yeah. Was that like 6 syllables?
It's a lot.
It also is a complicated thought process.
Mm-hmm.
So what is a reluctant thought leader? How am I reluctant? It opens up a question mark in a person's mind.
Yeah.
People don't gravitate towards question marks. They just want to be told what to do. It's like my McDonald's app.
If you don't mind,
$1 cheeseburger.
how did you come up with that first iteration, that first name, the name before you changed it to Emissary?
I think it is helpful in understanding the avatar client. I don't think it was worthless. I think I placed it in the wrong spot, right? That was better used in describing the avatar. Because a lot of people amass a degree of wisdom, experience, knowledge, and they, you know, which they could use to turn into thought leadership, but they're reluctant to do it because, you know, a number of
Right.
reasons. Most often, they don't want to go out there and be a guru, right? They don't want to be one of these people hawking all this stuff and buy my stuff, right? And they find that off-putting, and rightly so. And so there's a there's an education process. However, that was putting the concept, that was putting the making myself the avatar rather than the solution. I think
Got it.
that answers the question, if that satisfactorily answers the question. And yeah,
I
well, the results speak for themselves. It didn't work.
right. It reminds me of something that I tend to do when I can't find the word for something that I'm looking for. Um, I'll do this. I'll do this with my girlfriend pretty frequently because so it'll be something like get I'll like I can't remember like napkin or something, and so I'll describe what it is.
Hmm.
So I'll be like, don't spill on my. Can you get me one of those? Don't spill on my clothes.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
can you get me one of
Gotcha.
those? Wipe food off my face.
Gotcha.
The nobody thinks through from a brand perspective. Nobody thinks through exactly what that brand does. They just
Yep.
think through the name. Target. Oh, Target. Or Walmart. Always low prices. Always. Like,
Mhm.
what does that even mean? I don't know. Who's got low prices? Walmart. How low are they? I don't know. Pretty low. Who doesn't have low prices? I don't know. I guess everybody else. When do they have them? Always.
Mhm.
You're saving money? I don't know. Nobody does the math. It's just,
Yeah.
oh, Walmart must be cheap.
If I want cheap, I got to go to Walmart. Yeah.
Yeah. You have no idea. Nobody's ever done the math on it. You could walk over to Aldi probably next door and get food cheaper, but nobody does the math.
Yeah.
All right. So, quickly then, Paul, what would you say was, how have you grown through that? What was your growth point?
Well, uh, as I think I mentioned to you yesterday, if I look back to August, September of 2022, I was having a lot more sales conversations, but I was 0 for 50, right? Like if I had that many, nothing was turning over. And part of that was, yeah, I was offering just strictly ghostwriting and not publishing. Okay, fine. There was a demand that I was not reading correctly for a more holistic solution. And then also, I just had to deal with the fact that I was branding myself as the avatar rather than as the solution, which led to a whole bunch of conversations that I think sort of went in the same direction where um, there was no clear cut answer. There was just a whole bunch of verbal back and forth that ended in nothing. The problem at this time last year was that I was still paying, you know, a marketer to generate those leads for me. And I didn't, you know, I I got one client out of it, this entire campaign, and the rest of it just never materialized. So I think, it has business like exploded. No, it's not exploded, but what it has done is I'm getting a really solid return. I'm not spending any money to get it. And I'm having different conversations with the right kind of people. And that's the only conversations I'm really having. I'm wasting nothing like the amount of time I did. So I don't feel exhausted or exasperated by my business. I feel energized and excited about it. And that's a good place to be.
Awesome. Am I correct in saying that I was the one client last year?
I didn't want to disclose it, but yes, that there was, I
I just think it's
spent,
funny.
I spent, I broke even basically on that campaign. You're getting one client out of, I have no idea how many people.
Well,
You
look
know,
where you are today.
and look at me
That's good.
now. Yeah. I was voted most likely to succeed, and look at me now.
That's funny. What do you think, Ryan? You have you considered where you've grown, or do you want me to throw something out there for me?
Um, yeah, let me kind of, so this time last year, oh man, where was I last year this time? This time last year, I think I was in Mexico. Yeah, I was in Mexico working for a, a mid-sized uh, vertical SaaS company. They make, and I was making some good money. And I think around that time, I was starting to realize that there's more that I can do other than just selling my time and my skill set. And I started looking into what that was. I joined up in a couple of projects. And then um, I left my company, which was outside of my control, like I would say later on that year or earlier the next year. But at that time, I've already decided kind of move forward with um, starting a business. And through conversations and some connections that I made and made again, I was kind of solid on that. So I think where I was back in the day was like having the mind. I think my mindset changed, like having the mindset of someone who was happy to work for other people, like an employee mindset per se. And then it's shifted into more of an entrepreneurial mindset. I think once that happened, like my viewpoint started to change, and then the effort and focus that I um, had for other endeavors became that of more, again, entrepreneurial mindset. So from then until now, and when coming into the fourth quarter, I mean, yeah, thinking about it, like kind of started from nowhere, like had no idea, no direction. And then now I feel like in quarter four, I'm fairly in a good place to kind of release my first product. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Hmm. How would you say that you've grown through that process?
I th- I think becoming an entrepreneur forces you to really think outside of the box. I think having more of an employee mindset, there are a lot of things you don't have to consider. Um, Structure, infrastructure, um, supply chain, things like that, marketing, just at least in the position that I was in, I didn't really have to think about a lot of things outside of that role. Just had to focus on that. So you could say that I've grown in that way and having to broaden my perspective with regards to like different things to do and different goals to achieve. And yeah, a lot of it, I taught me a lot about myself with regards to persistence and how much uh, I can take on, I guess, with regards. And I think the biggest thing about it was once I changed my focus and perspective and my mindset, like you can s- you can start to see the path and start to see things working as you're beginning to journey down that path. So it let that leads me to believe that it is true that if you can put your mind to something, that it can actually happen.
Hmm.
So Ryan, what was the I want to back up just a step. You started to have this shift to where you thought you could do more than just trade your time and skill set. what was it that started to provoke that in you? Was it fatigue with working for the man, like a lot of people have? Was it just a long string of, kind of mediocre turnouts, results from what you've been expecting out of working for other people? Share a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I think over the past 2 years, I started to realize that I was not satisfied with not being able to control my own destiny. Uh, Um, when you work for other people, it's not up to you whether you continue to work for those people. Ultimately, those people decide whether or not they want to continue the partnership. And sure, you can, you know, um, move forward or quit or whatever. But at the end of the day, like it's you and somebody else in a particular partnership when you have a job, and one person, sometimes not you, can be like, well, I want to move forward without. So I was, after a while, really starting to consider well consider that I did not like that type of partnership anymore. I wanted to do something on my own, and I wanted to be the person who would tell myself to quit. Um, so that was something that kind of like was happening over time, something I started to realize more and more. And I think what was the actual like pivot point in my thought process was there was a conversation about a particular problem that my friends and I discussed with regards to, at least in this particular case, skincare for dudes, for men. And we started talking about it. My friend is like a skincare connoisseur, also a past esthetician. And her and I would have like these chats about like what we do for our skin and things like that. And then the story came up with me. Well, I thought about the story and the outcome of it, and I was like, "Oh snap! I feel like there's a need here that that it hasn't necessarily been tapped or is growing, in which people are looking to action through or to find a solution for these days, which was men um, being more and more aware, you know, how of them taking care of their skin." So I feel like this generation has been more tuned towards that, and more men are looking for solutions towards that. So I was like, well, now it feels like a really good time to really explore this. So and it so that's when my mindset started to change, and then when things really started to change was when I was starting to surround myself around more and more entrepreneurs and people who have kind of set out on their own. This group, amongst other groups that I associate myself with, especially. And I feel like at my age too, where I'm at in my life, at least the people around me are kind of in the same position in which there are major changes happening. I have friends going through divorce. I have friends going through like career changes and things like that. So those all came to factor when I think things started to really like turn over and gradually become to where I am now. I would say back in February, I would never have thought I would be having this conversation in late August. That makes sense? Yes. So I guess it felt slow, but I guess it was relatively quick.
Well, it sounds like you had a enough of an awareness of just all these things happening around you as you look around, coupled with a sense a lot of people have, right, that there's more. And I think what ends up happening is a lot of people have to either get forced into looking for more, or some people choose it voluntarily. And then there's the vast majority who just never do. Um, but I think, but from what I'm hearing, it sounds like took that and then, from what I'm learning about your story, circumstances have also conspired to push you further down that road almost involuntarily, which I would just advise you not to take as anything other than a good sign.
You know, I've had this conversation often, and I think I refer to it a lot, like the universe provides, or God provides, or whomever is up there looking after you provides, whatever. And I firmly believe that, like, and this is corny. So, if you've ever read The Secret or whatever, like that book, and, manifestation books and things like that. I remember when I first started like reading that book, it was years ago, probably more than 10 years ago. And there was a part in that book where there was an exercise in which, if you could focus, all you have to do is focus on one thing, something that you don't necessarily see out in the world. You probably can find it within a relatively quick amount of time. And so this exercise tells you to, like, focus on anything, like something that you don't necessarily see. And I remember, um, my focus was like, and this is weird. I used to be in the nightlife a lot and stuff. So I was like, oh, let me see if I can go out and find a green dress. And it was like the middle of November, December. So it was relatively cold, probably January. It's like a green dress, maybe with like a velvet sort of material. And I remember going through my night that evening and really trying to focus on finding this thing. And I started to notice that there were different instances of something that was close to what I was looking for. And it gradually became that thing, like in just different places that I look or see or visit. I remember like different nightclub lines or different places out in the street that I was just walking around in San Francisco or doing whatever. And then eventually it happened. Like, I found what I was looking for. And when I started to believe that that was a thing, it just started happening. Like, if I can go off on a quick tangent, like, mindset, I think for me has always been everything. The life that I live now is not a life that I imagined 2 years ago, especially before COVID. And I think one of the things that came out positive for me through COVID was the fact that you just had to sit there and think about stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
you're stuck in your
mhm.
house, and, you know, and you just kind of had to, like, ponder life, I guess. I think that's what most people were doing.
Yep.
So I started to meditate and, like, think about something that I really wanted. And to be honest, all of that has basically happened up until this point.
Hmm.
So I think where I grew, just to kind of finally answer this question, is I realized that not if you want something bad enough, but if you can focus on something long enough and get people around you to kind of help further your journey along to that thing that you're focusing on, that horizon, that landmark, you'll eventually get there. And you may not even know how you got there, but you will. And I can
Hmm.
say pretty confidently that that's been my life so far.
Yeah.
So the psychological term for part of what you're talking about is motivated perception. The idea that we see what we're looking for. We interpret what we see based on our pre-existing beliefs. And reality, whether reality changes for us or whether we just see reality in a different way, arguably could be both. But uh, the I like what you talked about when you said when you started hanging around people who were entrepreneurs, the reality began to set in that you could be an entrepreneur. This is a thing. And it's in my experience, it's so often that people remain stuck and unchanging because they don't change their circumstances. And
Mm.
the old saying of the difference between people who do and people who don't is people who do, and people who don't. And in a lot of ways, it's very simple. If you want to go do something, you've got to go do it. And then you look back and go, oh, I changed in innumerable ways, some of which I intended, some of which I didn't intend. But if we don't intend it, it never happens. And uh, I think that's a really good insight into looking forward. Um,
What about for you,
yeah, what,
Jason? Where's the growth for you?
yeah, for me, I would say it's resilience. Uh, One of the things that's plagued me through the years, through all of my years, is despite being um, despite gravitating and being called upon to sort of be public, be in the spotlight, I don't like it, and I back away from it. And I've learned to put on a show, basically put on a play, put it out there because I spent years in drama as a kid. And uh, one of the big growth points for that was Paul when we went through my book, um, writing that book and bringing that book into the public space was very scary for me. It
Mm,
shouldn't be, but I didn't want to. I I didn't want to put myself out there as much as I felt like I have to say this. I didn't want to say it because I felt like, oh, now what? What's going to come against me? And where, am I going to be walking through, gale force winds or into gale force winds? And the more I considered it, the more I thought about, you got to put this message out there. You got to say what you want to say. The stronger that fear became. And so I said, I have got to stop listening to this fear.
mm,
And even forward now into, putting the community out there and growing the community, it's as if I look past even the past year, and I'm, going to be 46 at the end of this year, which feels old and young all at the same time. Uh, the, the, the point of growth really has been put yourself out there and, don't pay attention to the haters.
mm.
That has been a huge point of growth for me. And who would have known it? Because like I talk to all sorts of people and they think you're an introvert. I would never have guessed that. I thought you're an extrovert. I thought you'd want to be out there. It's like, no, I don't want to be out there.
Mm.
I don't, I just think there's something valuable to say and valuable to talk about, value to bring to the world. And I think we have to do that. I think I have to do that. Otherwise I feel like I'm misusing talents and connections and gifts and all sorts of stuff. So that has been my biggest point of growth,
Mm.
developing a significant
Mm.
amount of resilience while being very public about this stuff that I do.
To give um to basically give the finger to reservation, like we've talked about, or holding back, or fear of being misunderstood or maligned, or um
Part of it is big. Part of it is fear of being misunderstood, but not so much that that I think was in a long time ago when I felt like I needed to explain things. And there was a turning point where I was like, oh, wait a second, I don't need to explain anything. If you don't get it, I'm not here to educate you.
yeah.
Uh, and there was a very significant, there was a defining moment that I don't want to talk about publicly, but there was a defining moment in that where I was just like, what is like, I'm like the person I'm speaking with who I'd known for years and years and years. I was like, you don't understand. Like everybody's looking at you going, you don't understand. And I felt like I needed to like continue to coach or educate. And I was like, finally I gave up. I was like, I don't care. If you don't get it, I'm not here to educate you.
Yeah.
But the the I think the greater thing is, you say, hey, give the finger. I don't like to give the finger. I talk about it, but I don't actually want to publicly be like, hey, F you, because I don't
Yeah.
want to be that person. I don't like what that does to my heart and how I approach people in the world. And so it's been a balancing act of being very uh very maybe feeling abrupt with folks, being like, here's what I intend to do, here's what I intend to say, and I don't care if you don't like it, without letting that harden into sort of a combative,
Sure.
combative nature. I don't like
Yeah.
that in me.
Yeah.
So that's
Harden
where
into
I've
like contempt or something.
Being obnoxious.
Yeah,
Or,
exactly. Just being
yeah.
clear and direct and also caring. I'm trying to figure out that tightrope. I care about you as an individual, and I really don't care about your opinion at all.
I think that's a good way to look at it.
And I think like, no, I think you probably got this, but I mean more like giving the finger to the false sense of reservation or whatever, the false,
Mm.
all the false ideas we come up with in our heads before we actually do something, to talk ourselves out of doing it or to smother what we know we need to do. Um, those things I take to be spiritual essences with an intellect, because they do speak in language, right? They do think and they do communicate with us. And so I've learned to treat them that way. And part of that is challenging the nonstop um, tape that plays in our head.
You're talking of the voices in your head.
The voice, yeah. All the
Mhm.
voices in my head. Nobody else has that. It's just me.
Yeah. Well, I heard somebody, some lady, I think it was probably on TikTok or something. She said the imagery is she's sitting in the back of her camper van. The side door is open, the back door is open. She's, in a beautiful forested area. And she says, sometimes I sit here and I think I should go outside. And then I think, whose voice is that that says I should? And so she's coached herself into asking two different questions. As soon as the voice says you should, I say, do I want to?
Yeah.
And then I answer that question. And then I ask, do I need to? And I answer that question. If I don't want to and I don't need to, then I don't know who's saying I should, but it's not me.
Yeah.
And so many times I think I'll speak for myself. I found myself in situations where like I should do such and such. I don't want to, and I don't need to. So actually I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that should probably came from somebody else at some point in time. And it's just taking up residence in my head. It's living
Yep.
rent free. I think that's what the cool kids say.
Yeah. And if you're talking about clear indications of growth, I think that the ability to recognize those voices and to respond to them appropriately is one of the greatest mile markers. Not the only one, but one of the more significant mile markers of maturity, not just for an entrepreneur, but for anybody. But especially if you are taking leadership and ownership and all the responsibility that an entrepreneur does, because if you're working a job, a lot of what your activities are decided for you, right? And so you can have shiny object syndrome all you want to, but you still got a job to do and you're very clear on what it is. Well, when you're the leader and you're free to choose what you focus your attention on, shiny object syndrome suddenly becomes on steroids, and should shaming as well. You should do this. You should be doing that. It on YouTube says you should be making this much money. No, I shouldn't. Says who? Right? It's not laid down anywhere. I don't see it in the law. It's not. So, yeah.
All right. That's a lot of growth in the past year.
Another thing I figured out, good habits, getting into good habits. I think that's a really big way I've grown. Fitness for me, for example, has been something that I've continually, I think, chased throughout my life, but I didn't realize that like creating a habit out of it was really important. Like I rock climb, like, and years ago that was like my main form um, of exercise, and I didn't really have to think about creating a habit around it because I always had friends that wanted to go. Hence, again, that keeping people around you with like minds doing what wanting to do like things, and then now that's changed, right? Like up in the past couple of years, and last year, my girlfriend, so I live part time in Colombia. And before I went back, my girlfriend was like working out a lot and hitting the gym every day. We got her a trainer and all that. And so when I returned, she was like, "You need to hit the gym now too." Like like, I can't, I can't have you not go to the gym and I go. And I was like, yes, I'm not trying to be the chubby boyfriend of like the hot girlfriend. So I went and I started to form a habit around going every day because she went every day and our trainer wanted us to come as often as we could. And it was affordable. And that started to create a habit. And now I'm not in Colombia, I'm in San Francisco. Um, and I'm here for the next few months. Keeping those habits have been the most important in like in my fitness journey so far. And so taking that part of, of what I learned with regards to like keeping habits and, working little by little and things like that have been transferred over into what I'm doing now with Guardian Skincare and like just working at it little by little and not thinking that I have to like intensely build something in 1 week just for it to be created. I realized that like if you work on something incrementally, then eventually, as long as you keep your focus on it, you're going to be able to create it and bring it to life and launch it or whatever. So building those habits and creating that type of mindset where, again, just knowing that that point of view of something like, as long as you're working on something consistently, it's going to change, does happen. I think that's where a lot of the growth that I've come through, that I've come up with has happened. And I guess today here I am with Guardian Skincare and moving forward with that. And fitness wise, like I feel like at 43, I'm not too far behind you guys. Huh? Um, I'm feeling like the most healthy I could ever be throughout my life. Like I stopped smoking years ago. I can run. I can run to places. I can lift things, and and my pants fit well. So
There
yeah,
we
I
go.
think that's where a lot of the growth came this year.
There's we have an author whose book is coming out in early next year, and he does telehealth counseling and all of that. And I was reviewing the manuscript as it's about to go to publishing, and he has an entire chapter on the fact that um, the more microscopic you can make the task, the more the faster you're going to get to the big elephant that's so hard to eat. In other words, like he says, he's competed in 18 triathlons now, 18 Ironmans. And
Cool.
this is after having nearly died from being over 100 pounds overweight and needing to lose 100 pounds. And he says, when I train for a triathlon, right, you gotta think like we think you get on a bike, you ride half a mile and you lean forward, you sit up, maybe you can ride with no hands, you can pedal slowly, you can pedal fast, you can do whatever you want. Well, when you're doing an Ironman, it's different. Your body is bent forward, pedaling as fast as you can for as long as you can for, I forget how many miles it is. And so he's describing in the chapter, he's saying, I'm practicing for this. And, after I've had my body bent for 5 minutes on a bike, I want to sit up. but I can't. Not if I want to train for an Ironman. I have to keep it bent, right? And so
Wow.
what I'll do is I'll do it the first time, I'll do it for 5 minutes. And then the next day I do it again for 5.5 minutes. And then the next day I do it for 6 minutes, right? And he builds and builds and builds, just adding 30 seconds, 30 seconds. Then he adds 60 seconds. Then you add a minute, a minute 30, and then you can add 2 minutes. But by the time you get to the point where you've added that much, the compounding amount of it, right? It doesn't feel like 5 minutes anymore, because now you're doing it for 12 minutes, 18 minutes, 34 minutes, right? And your body's used to it, but it needs, and the soul as well, right? Because the soul is going to be kvetching and griping the whole time. I'm uncomfortable. Why don't you sit up? What are you doing? Right? And so the soul also needs to be conditioned to that. No, you can stay where you are. Stay another 30 seconds. Give me 30 more seconds, right? So yeah, it's tremendously helpful if you're starting a business, if you're working on scaling or growing a business. The smaller and more incremental and microscopic you can make each task. You're trying to write 1,000 words. Well, today write 200 words. Tomorrow write 250 words. The next day, on and on and on. Ironically, the faster you'll get there, the faster you'll get to what you're really after, versus, you get distracted, you try and find an alternate way to do it, you start getting shiny object syndrome, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Exactly. You got to start somewhere. And to your point, if you can make each task as minuscule as the next, you'll find yourself one foot ahead of the other, I guess you can say.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. A full Ironman triathlon is 2.4 mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and a 26.2-mile run.
Yeah.
Dang.
That's a lot.
112 miles on a bike is a long way to be bent forward, right? Barely looking up, except to make sure you keep your eye on the road in front of you. And going as fast as you can for as long as you can, because it's also a race, right?
Yeah.
So I think applying what we've talked about, and then, thinking about this idea of an Ironman triathlon, making that relevant in my mind to entrepreneurs. Too often entrepreneurs, I think, are looking to win that race as though winning means going full speed and optimal training and all this other stuff. And the reality is that that's not going to happen.
No.
But what will happen is that if you continue to take it off in bite-sized chunks, allow the growth, evaluate the growth, and just know that you are on target. And the more you keep looking towards the finish line, the closer you will become. You are going to the finish line as you look to the finish line. To Ryan's point, you're going to see what you're looking for. So look for what you want to see, and then move in that direction. And then, Paul, to your point, just keep going. Train for it, but in all cases, keep going. And I think as we move towards the end of 2023 and have that delineation point of another year is done, what do you want to see in the last quarter of this year, as we are 30 days out from roughly about 30 days out from beginning that last quarter? What do you want to see? What's your finish line, or where you headed, at least?
I think a big milestone for me heading into the last quarter is launching my first product and getting it. I'd love to see sales where I'm selling 10 or 15 units a day of that first product. And then by the end of the year, finding myself at a place where I've sold out of my first product and having to think about what it's going to be like to restock or formulate a new product. That's where I'd like to be at the end of the year. I think by November, I want to set a goal on where my store and my marketing have all come together. And by Black Friday, I'd love to have my product out there online or in stores or both, and then in selling. I'd love to see that. That'd be the coolest thing.
Awesome.
I think, Jason, you and I will probably share some of this, although you may have something completely separate on your radar. But I'm looking forward to the emissary authors that we are the closest to the finish line with in terms of onboarding them and turning them into clients and then turning them into successful authors. Just because I think, in the same way, I think that we're after the first success stories from the Thinker Growth labs that you're putting together, right? The proof of concept will be there, the results will be there, the testimonials will be there, and other people will take notice. And that should set off the kind of beginnings, at least, of the chain reactions that we're looking for. And for me to be able to play a role in both of those is exciting and fulfilling work. And what does it mean when you have your plate full of exciting, fulfilling work? It means you lose track of time and you just enjoy the ride because you're constantly doing stuff that energizes and stimulates and forces you to grow.
Yeah, it's good stuff. For me, I think the community here is at a point where we've got a lot of content, we've got a lot of connections, and it's very near go time. I think the clarity around the accelerator and how the accelerator would work to benefit entrepreneurs is becoming very clear. And so being able to press on the gas and then see the results, both in Ryan's products and then in Emissary and John and Kirk, and then, some folks who might be coming in to help them scale. That's super exciting to me.
Mhm.
And I just love seeing people's, it sounds a little bit corny, but I love seeing people's dreams come true. That just tickles me.
Yeah.
In all the good ways.
It's always nice to win.
I promise I'm going to never say tickles me because that's weird.
I'd love
Why
to,
even-
I'd love to see Thinker Growth for me, and we just start. I've been listening to the pitch on Fox Media platform.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. It's so cool. Like, people watch Shark Tank, but I feel like it's just too dramatic, I guess. Like, doesn't really pose real world stuff. But this is like, it's like American Idol with businesses.
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's not for me. Anyways, listening to the pitch, I'd love to get to a point where we're in a room or on a Zoom call like this, and people come in and just start really talking about their businesses, and we get to see not say, but evaluate their business and kind of help them, guide them into where they want to go. That's gonna be super fun. The stuff that we did a while back with, I believe, Kirk and his partner, I'd love to do more of those. So I'm really looking forward to where we're all going with the Good Growth community. I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Me too. Well, any final words here as we slide into the last 2 minutes or so?
Make a note of where you are
Mm.
right now, because maybe what we should do, Jason, is earmark the end of August 2024 to do a episode 2 of this episode. And
Part
ask
2
the
in
same
August.
question,
Part
or
2
maybe
in December.
maybe quarterly, or every 6 months, because golly, you grow a lot in 80 days as an entrepreneur.
Oh my gosh. I thought working in sales was aging. When you work in sales, every week feels like a month,
Mhm.
and every month feels like a year. But working as an entrepreneur, man, like, everything just time goes slow and fast at the same time. Like, things are
Yeah.
like just crawling along, and then all of a sudden you turn around, you're like, oh snap, I just did all this stuff.
And how many different versions of yourself have existed, right? Just like a software update, every so often you literally are like a computer software update, the same kind of thing that pops up in the corner of your screen and you got to hit X to get rid of it, right? That's actually happening to us through the journey we're going through. So my parting words would be: you're watching this, you're listening, those of us hosting, right? Let's make a note of where we are, who we are, what we're working on, and then beginning of 2024, and especially end of August 2024 will be very interesting to go back, listen to this, and then say, oh, that guy's not around anymore. He was good then, but the different ball game now, partner.
Yeah, I'd love to see like, yeah, or on the other side, like, oh wow, you really either made that thing happen, or oh they were in a challenge and then they pivoted and now it's really working out. That's what I love about that pitch show that I've been listening to on this podcast, is that they go into like what happens after the pitch and what happened to that company after the fact. Some companies have pivoted and are doing even better. Some companies not so much. Some companies have, done and set out. I'd love to, yeah, I'd love to see what will happen by December, and then another, and then June beyond that, like what happens after every 6 months or every quarter, like you said.
Yep. Well, I've made a note to review this back in review this again in December.
So great.
All right, gentlemen. Well, great to see you today. On the workshop happens every Tuesday at Thinker Growth Community, where we discuss all topics for entrepreneurs. If you need the assistance of anybody, reach out to any of our faculty members or anybody else in the community. And we will see you again next Tuesday on the workshop.
Ciao for now. Bye.
Ciao.